Hello and good morning, everyone. Welcome back to our morning coffee time for Monday, September the 7th. Hope everybody had a good weekend. And for those of you in a different time zone, a good Monday. Very enjoyable weekend here at the Hermitage. Small groups of friends and supporters coming for meal offerings outside these days on the deck in front of the Hermitage house is a real pleasant experience. Not too hot, not too cold, usually a nice kind of breeze. And the garden looks quite good still for late summer, early September. And been thinking a lot about the impending fall and just what a blessing it is to be able to meet outside and share that space with friends, with people coming and supporting us in this timeless way of offering food to the monastics and having a meal, and then sharing some time catching up with one another and reflecting on life and Dhamma and our endeavor to grow in goodness and develop our Dhamma practice for the overcoming of dukkha. Watching the kind of situation with the pandemic here, just not really sure what the winter's going to look like at this point yet. So I've been encouraging people, if you live in the Gorge or Portland and you haven't been out to the Hermitage for a while, please get in touch with the Dana coordinators. We still have to coordinate and look after the numbers of people that can gather outside, but compared to other situations, it's quite a reasonably safe situation while the weather's nice and we can sit outside and talk Dhamma and share some time and companionship with each other. It's going on almost 6 months for here and many places in the world where we've had lots of things shut down and a lot of social distancing. And although it's nice to be able to do things like this, and I've heard from so many of my friends that there's just this incredible wealth of Dhamma offerings going on online as various monks and nuns and teachers are reaching out to try to support people in their practice and continue to offer teachings and encouragement for Dhamma practice and a sense of Sangha or community. That's the upside. I mean, the downside is there is enormous delight and strength in being able to physically kind of gather and practice Dhamma together. And I hope it won't be too much longer until we can have a little bit of that. So especially this winter, when we won't be able to gather outside so much. So that's one thing we'll be investigating. Normally we have a monthly event here at the Hermitage. People come and help care for the Hermitage land and the gardens and help out with some of the tasks that we can't do as monks because of our monastic code. And that's usually a kind of wonderful community gathering because people that live a little further afield sometimes will come, and there's friends from Portland and friends from the Gorge communities that come together, and it's a nice way to kind of connect and share time and for people to meet one another and share some friendship. And that's one of the things we've been missing this year. We've had to cancel all those events. But we're just planning to do an an event here in a couple of weeks. So not next weekend, but the following weekend. And I don't have the dates in front of me, but I think it's something like the 26th and 27th of September. We're going to have our annual Woodchuckers Ball. So Venerable Rikito and Ajahn Sudanto have been helping out with firewood preparation. And last week I reached out to a few friends and made some arrangements so we can get a trailer. And if people want to come out for a couple hours on a Saturday or a Sunday, or both days if you're really into it, I think we can do a gathering where we all pitch in together and help load up and move the firewood from our upper property down below where we're going to need it for the winter. So, and it's one of these tasks outside that we can do in a way that's rather safe. Either make firemen's brigades and pass the wood from socially safe distances to one another, and spread out and stack it up for the winter time. So if people are in the Gorge community or in the Portland community are interested, that's another opportunity that's kind of coming up. So late September on the weekend of the 26th, 27th. And that's something we do every year, and usually about a dozen people show up. So I think if a dozen people show up on either of those days, we'll have to break up into two groups. One on the lower land, one on the upper land. But if you're, we'll get something up on our website. But just to let people know that that's kind of up and coming, that's another opportunity for coming out to visit the Hermitage and help us out with this preparation for heating the Hermitage for the winter with all the firewood that's been prepared. So. I don't know if it's the extra contact over the weekend or not, but this morning my meditation seemed sluggish in some sort of way, or just lacking a sense of magic and wonder. I wasn't falling asleep, but my mind was kind of restless in some sort of way where things just didn't come together in the way that I like. It took a little extra effort just to keep directing the mind. Never really found that place of magic and effortlessness that can be so delicious in our meditation experience. And likewise, thinking about offering a reflection this morning, not feeling all that wise. And it's always interesting for me as a monk, setting up regular events where you're hoping to be wise and inspiring or offer some support to people, to have the conditions be ever other, and being in that situation. It's fertile ground for making a problem out of things, but this too is kind of the nature of anicca, and even in the very earliest of the suttas, the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta, when the Buddha's talking about non-self, it's that inability to be the owner of things and in full control of things, especially the mind. We can't just will our mind to be as we would like it to be. And this is part of the dukkha of the human realm and conscious experience. We can make dates, we can make plans. Sometimes our physical health is not what we want to be. Sometimes the emotions or even just various mental faculties are not where we want them to be. And that's part of the truth of impermanence and not self. And it's fertile ground to create a problem, of course. It's very easy for me to start creating some sort of stories. I've been a monk for 20 some years. I've been trying to learn to offer spontaneous reflections to people for 10 plus years. I should have more control than I do. I should be better than I am. And this is something one really needs to watch out for and meet with wisdom. I think of it as the gap between the ideal and the actual. Maybe at best. At worst, it's just selfing. The idea that our plans and our desires should somehow all be supported with a perfect alignment of the conditions that would foster those. And surely intention and effort and past karma and the development of various aptitudes or skills allows us some profound ability to shape our experience for good or for ill. But it's never truly me or mine, and it's never truly something that we can fully rely upon. And the more we have some sort of a feeling for and sense and have developed a little bit of insight into what the Buddha means by the truth of anicca, we get a sense that part of what it means for something to be anicca is that it's not stable, and therefore it's not sure, it's not reliable. Certain aspects of being and certain conscious habits we have, certain aptitudes we have seem quite reliable, but they're never really ours. They're never something that we can count on with 100% surety. And that's a huge part of what the teaching of not self is pointing to, because we tend to identify with the fact that there are durable patterns of aptitude and being and capacities and capabilities. Like in some sort of worldly and conventional way, I mean, we have personalities. But the truth of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and selflessness is pointing to the fact that that's not really who we are. We don't really own that. And in terms of the experience of being free from dukkha, it's not reliable. And it's really through a growth in Dhamma and even in our meditative aptitude that we're consciously trying to grow the ability to be with the way it is. Like so much suffering comes up in that gap that exists between the ideal and the actual. And the self is just one subset of all the ideals that we hold. And because of tanha, and because of an undeveloped wisdom into the way it is, there's still an unknowing that creates this kind of liability. And we find ourselves stuck between the ideal and the actual. The ideal is so powerful when coupled with tanha, this thirsting desire that leads to dukkha, that it's even difficult to apprehend and fully take into consciousness the actual. You see this when you examine sort of how it is that perception works. So much of perception is seen because you believe it. The views that we hold to, most importantly, the self-view that we hold to, has a massive conditioning effect on what it is that we're even able to sort of perceive. And the role that identity sort of plays in that has this distorting and even magnifying effect on how it is that we perceive reality. So like if we're convinced that I am like this or I am like that, say one is identified with being an anxious person or a fearful person, there's this, it's a sensitive area for one. And on some level we're set up to sort of perceive and be on the watch for information that confirms and solidifies that sort of perception. So you can have this complete overreaction through the over-personalization of some fleeting kind of mind moment when you're really sensitive to it. Like when there's a lot of fear and desire not to be like that, to be different, not to have the challenge of like learning how to overcome some particular emotional habit pattern that one has for whatever reason, past karma, present life conditioning, a lack of strength, or maybe even a lack of understanding of how to live in a more skillful way where that doesn't create such a liability or problem. And then just the flickering of anxiety comes up in the mind and exists for maybe only a flash, but one so identified with it and so sensitive to that it's immediately taken as confirmation of the person that we fear we really are, or the despair that we might feel that we'll never be free from some particular emotional habit pattern. And it's clung to. It's not really seen as something that is arising and passing away. And when there's a great sensitivity to it, it's almost as it still exists because one's so identified with it. And there's so much tanha bound up with that particular mental state or emotion. Similar, you get angry. If you've really been trying to become a more loving and kind person and something sets you off, you have a difficult interaction with somebody and you get angry. And if you've really been sincerely trying to understand that habit pattern and overcome it, it's almost inevitable that a little bit of craving seeps in there and creates this kind of liability, so that when you do make a mistake or you are overwhelmed and you have a little angry reaction, maybe you don't even do or say anything, but you just get angry and you've really been trying to work on it. It's hard to release oneself from that and just not create extra suffering. It's hard not to even notice its disappearance. These things arise, they exist, and they cease. Of course, the end goal is to develop the path sufficiently and develop such a storehouse of merit and good karma and serenity and insight that these things arise kind of less and less. But as a practitioner, you want to get to that state where they don't cause such a lingering kind of disturbance in your life. You want to get to a state where you can recognize what's really going on. And in particular, recognize how these things arise, exist, and cease. How they're impermanent, unsatisfactory, and not self. And to grow your ability to sort of clearly apprehend the way it is, and to abide with that in a way that is profoundly skillful and absent any suffering, absent any dissonance, absent any sense of it being problematic or wrong. You want to get out of the trap of being stuck in that gap between the ideal and the actual, and learn how to be more and more skillfully with the actual. You don't want to discard ideals, but you don't want to be trapped by them either. So we need ideals, and we need to reflect on them and to be motivated and inspired by them, so that we're meeting the actual and it is inspired and informed by the ideal. And the ideals of Dhamma are many, but chief amongst them is to release oneself from dukkha, and to be skilled in doing that, or at least skilled in resolving presently arisen dukkha and arousing more skillful states of mind through the exercise of right effort. So mind the gap, mind that gap between the ideal and the actual. It is one of the places we often get ourselves trapped and stuck in samsara. Okay, well, I'll try to take a couple questions here. For somebody not feeling very reflective, I seem to talk a lot longer than I intended to. See, I saw a question here from Sumana. And also an announcement. In Upasika Tea Time with Ajahn Sona yesterday, a 10-day online retreat over Christmas was announced. Grateful for the cyber opportunities being offered. So yeah, I'm not sure if Ajahn has anything up on the Birkin website, but this is something we've been talking about. And he's invited me to participate doing Q&A sessions. I am planning to be at a Baigiri during that time period, so I told him I'm willing to offer that if I can, but I need to arrange things with a Baigiri because I'll be down there this winter for 3 months doing some retreat down there. But heads up to people, that's one thing to be looking forward to. And I saw your follow-up question, Bonnie, as well, sort of, would I be doing that? So I've agreed to try, and as long as the Baigiri can support that, then hopefully it'll happen. What Buddhist concept is at play in the following example? I get a brand new iPhone. I enjoy it first. As successive iPhones are released over the years, it becomes less enjoyable and feels dated, although nothing has essentially changed about it since I first got it. It is still the same phone with the same features. However, I have become disenchanted with it. This applies to many other things that I inquire life. I believe there is a Buddhist concept that describes this. What might it be, and how might I learn from it and apply it? Well, Douglas, that is the description, or a description of how Kama Tanha works. Like, Tanha is informed by a delusion. And, in this example, part of the delusion is that a new iPhone can bring you more happiness than it really can. And it's part of the nature of, it's part of what I mean by the difference between the ideal and the actual. Like, if we think of some object of desire like that, we're really not all that good about thinking of it in the right way. There's just some idea that this will bring me happiness in a particular way. And sometimes we have the experience, we get something and it brings us more happiness and pleasure than we expected. It's not always that it's a disappointment, but it's never as you image it. And more importantly, it never brings you satisfaction. And part of the way avijja tanha works is, whether conscious or unconscious, there is some sense that it can bring you satisfaction that it can't. And some of the delight and happiness is born of that delusion. I'm not sure all of it is, but the part we care about is born of that delusion. So, and you say nothing changes about it, but that's also not really true. I mean, everything changes about it. Like, the world changes. So, and your expectations change. And, there's hedonic adaptation as well. Like, with something that does bring us a certain amount of pleasure, either through its utility or because of our sensual enjoyment of it, you adjust to that. You get a new, say you have a clunker car or something, or a car that's old and problematic and it requires a lot of maintenance, and you're dreaming of a new car. It'd be so nice to have a new car for all the reasons that you might want a new car, but maybe one of the chief things is just not to have the responsibility and the struggle to constantly be trying to figure out how to maintain this old car and all the defilements that might come with that. The kind of confusion of like, man, the transmission's going, is it really worth replacing? Or it's a habitual challenge to your equanimity. You're frustrated and regretful and angry that you have to give it more attention and time and money than one might want. And anyways, you get a new car. It does provide you all this kind of utility. And both dukkha and sukha, happiness and suffering, are affected by contrast. It's all relative, in a sense. So refined dukkha is still dukkha. And absent some really strong, unfortunate coarse dukkha in your life, refined dukkha is still dukkha. Like, it's still dissonance, and it still hurts. It's still pain. It's still the experience of unsatisfactoriness. And I think the same is true of sukha as well, our pleasure and happiness. It's all somewhat sort of relative. So you get rid of the clunker car, you get the new, reliable car that doesn't require the maintenance. So you're freed from a certain set of worries or a certain set of liabilities that came with the old one. And that is pleasant. That's pleasurable. That's pleasant. That's a happy thing. And at first, the experience of that, the hedonic experience of that is tremendous, because you're not far away from everything associated with owning the old one, all the dukkha of the old one. But it doesn't take long. And over time, we just adjust. And it becomes, the pleasure sort of diminishes, because it's normal, and there's just something about the way the human mind works. It's called the hedonic treadmill. And the last part of your question was, how can I learn from this? It's like, watch it carefully and be a little more skeptical of the voice of desire. And desire it's like the most pernicious, annoying salesman in the world. When you're convinced that something is going to bring you a kind of happiness and satisfaction that it can't. It's like inviting this horribly annoying used car salesman sort of into your house. And he's got 24/7 opportunity to try to hijack your attention and sell you. And as practitioners, we should develop a real sense of heedfulness and a skeptical ability to sort of challenge that voice that's selling you and constantly inflating the value of things. And something that helps that immensely is just insight into the nature of anicca, dukkha, anatta, a remembrance and a reflection that all the past acquisitions have not yet brought us to the point of completion and everlasting satisfaction. Those can be helpful. Also, the fact that you can lose everything. Like this morning, I was, over the weekend, I heard we were having some really challenging weather conditions coming in, which is going to greatly magnify the fire danger in our area here. And one of our close friends of the Hermitage is a local weather forecaster, and she said it could create the worst fire danger in 100 years. And I thought, wow, that's rather frightening. So something on my mind this morning is, how prepared am I to grab and go if the fire conditions worsen or fires start in our area? And I haven't looked at the forecast, but I guess part of the prediction is some pretty extreme winds and high fire danger. And our main monastery in California faced a horrible fire a couple years ago that started in the middle of the night with very high winds just to the east of us. And 3 major fires broke out in Northern California somewhere near midnight. And it's just amazing like how quickly these fires can spread when the humidity is so low and you're late in the fire season and you have strong winds. I had friends that literally just barely got out of their home, still in their pajamas. And when you realize that at any moment you could lose it all through natural disaster, through theft, or if it's an iPhone, you can just, all it takes is one drop sometimes and it's gone. $1,000 of pleasure smashed to smithereens. So some sort of reflection about the fragility of that kind of happiness and just how quickly it can be taken away from us. There's a lot of work that's gone into the Hermitage here, and there's a lot of tools and requisites here that I would hate to see just go up in smoke. But if a fire comes ripping through here tonight or tomorrow or on Wednesday, I have to be ready not to suffer and just accept that this too belongs. This is part of the nature of life on earth. And something that helps protect one against suffering is like some deeper sort of sense that those things never really get you what you want anyways. Like what we want is peace and freedom from suffering. In a sense, you don't really want to be happy. You want to be free. You want to be at peace. Okay, well, I've gone a little long this morning, friends. But hopefully this is a little start for your week and a meaningful sort of reflection. So be well. I will see you all tomorrow if it all doesn't burn down today, which I don't expect it will. So, but you never know. But be well, and we'll see you all tomorrow morning.